I'd only stopped by to buy flowers for my mom's birthday. She loved fresh daisies and lilies, and I wanted to surprise her before our lunch together. The shop on Pine Street was on my way, a small place with weathered brick walls, big windows filled with blooms, and a faded sign that always made me think of simpler times. I'd been inside once or twice before, but I couldn't recall ever meeting the man behind the counter. The air smelled like lavender and roses, warm and sweet, wrapping around me the moment I stepped through the door. A faint jazz melody floated from a speaker somewhere near the back. The place felt quiet in that way small flower shops often do, as if the outside world had been left behind. The florist was tall, in his 40s, with dark hair combed neatly back and an apron dusted with petals. He glanced up when I walked in, his eyes studying me in a way that felt less like a greeting and more like an assessment. He nodded without smiling, then returned to trimming the stems of a bouquet on the counter. I wandered toward a display of daisies, running my fingertips lightly over their soft white petals. My mind was on my mother, Linda Carter, 60 years old and the heart of my world. She'd been through so much in her life, from raising me alone after my father left to caring for patients during her decades as a nurse. This birthday was special. I wanted her to feel loved, appreciated. I was crouched slightly, inspecting the freshest stems, when a voice behind me said, "Your daughter is beautiful." The words were so unexpected I froze. Slowly I straightened and turned. A little girl stood a few feet away, looking straight at me. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her long brown hair was parted neatly down the middle, falling over the shoulders of a pale yellow sundress. Her eyes were an intense shade of green, wide and unwavering. She wasn't holding a parent's hand. She wasn't even glancing toward the florist. She was focused entirely on me. "I'm sorry," I said, unsure if I'd heard her right. She smiled, small dimples appearing in her cheeks. "I've been waiting for you." The sentence was delivered with such certainty it made my stomach tighten. My first instinct was to glance around for her mother. No one else was in the shop. The florist had set down his scissors and was now watching us openly, his arms resting on the counter. I took a small step back, feeling the edge of the daisy display press into my hip. "Sweetheart, I think you must have me confused with someone else," I said, keeping my voice gentle. Her smile didn't fade. She tilted her head, almost studying me, the way a child might study a familiar face. "You're my mom," she said matter-of-factly. The words hit like a gust of cold air. I shook my head. "No, I'm not." That was when the florist's hand moved, not toward the bouquet he'd been working on, but under the counter. I couldn't see what he was reaching for, but the shift in his posture was deliberate. He stepped slightly to the side, his body angled toward both me and the front door. Then I heard it, a metallic click, quiet but unmistakable. The kind of sound you only notice when you know what it means. The door behind me was locked. A ripple of unease traveled through me. My phone was in my bag, but my hands felt suddenly clumsy, my breath shallow. I glanced at the little girl again, hoping to see some sign that this was just a strange misunderstanding, that her real mother would walk in any second. Instead, she took a small step toward me. "I told you I'd find you," she said softly. I swallowed hard and forced a polite smile, my mind already racing. "What's your name?" "Sophie," she answered without hesitation. The florist finally spoke. "She's been waiting a long time," he said, his tone calm but carrying an undertone I couldn't place. My phone buzzed in my bag. The vibration felt louder than it should in the quiet shop. I pulled it out, half relieved to see my mom's name on the screen. The text read, "Can't wait to see you, sweetheart." I typed back quickly, "I'm at the flower shop, be there soon," but didn't hit send. Something told me not to let the florist know I had a direct line to anyone outside. When I looked up, he was still staring, his gaze steady and unreadable. Sophie was now standing close enough that I could see a faint scar on her wrist, pale against her skin. My pulse thudded in my ears. The shop suddenly felt smaller, the walls closer. Somewhere outside, a car drove past, its tires humming over the asphalt, reminding me that normal life was continuing just beyond these locked doors. Inside, though, nothing felt normal anymore. I didn't know who Sophie was. I didn't know why this man was watching me like that. All I knew was that something was very wrong, and the moment I'd stepped into that shop, my day, and maybe my life, had taken a turn I couldn't yet understand. My morning had started without a hint of trouble. I had woken early, brewed coffee, and stood by the kitchen window watching the soft drizzle fade into sunshine. It was my mother's birthday, and I had planned the day in my head. Flowers, lunch at her favorite diner, and a small gold bracelet I had saved up for. She deserved it all. Linda Carter was the one person I could always count on, and birthdays were my chance to show her that I didn't take her for granted. I had decided to walk into the Florist on Pine Street rather than pick something generic from the grocery store. The shop was known for arranging flowers in a way that felt personal, like they'd been made for you. The last time I had come in was months ago just to browse. It had been quiet then too, but I remembered a different man behind the counter. The one today, tall, dark-haired, with a stern face, was new to me. When I stepped inside, the door closed with a gentle chime. The air was warm and fragrant, filled with the scents of roses, lilies, and something herbal I couldn't quite place. The space was narrow, with displays arranged so customers had to weave between them. A long counter stretched across the back, where the florist was trimming the stems of a bouquet. His movements were slow, deliberate, as though each cut was measured twice before the scissors closed. I smiled politely, but he didn't return it, only giving me a small nod before returning to his work. I told myself not to read into it. Not everyone greeted strangers with warmth. Still, there was something in the way his eyes followed me as I moved toward the display near the window. I crouched slightly to check the daisies, brushing my fingers against the soft petals. My mind drifted to the lunch ahead, imagining my mom's face when she saw me walk into the diner, holding her favorite flowers. I could picture her, short, silver-haired, with kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled. She had weathered hard years and still found reasons to laugh. She was why I valued kindness. A small display near the register caught my eye, a photograph in a chipped silver frame. In it, a smiling woman held a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. The woman looked tired but happy. Next to the photo sat a child's drawing, the paper slightly curled at the edges. It showed two figures, one taller, one smaller, holding hands under a bright yellow sun. In large, uneven letters at the bottom, it was signed Sophie. I thought about asking the florist if that was his daughter, but decided not to intrude. Instead, I focused on picking the freshest daisies, holding them one by one to check the stems. That was when I heard the voice behind me. "Your daughter is beautiful." The words didn't register right away. I turned, expecting to see another customer speaking to someone else. Instead, there was only the little girl. She was standing completely still, her green eyes fixed on me. Her pale yellow sundress looked freshly ironed, the hem brushing just above her knees. Her hair was neat, as if someone had taken care to smooth each strand into place. "I'm sorry?" I asked, my voice polite but cautious. Her expression didn't change. "I've been waiting for you," she said. I looked toward the counter. The florist had stopped trimming stems. He was watching us openly now, his hands resting on the wood. Something about his posture made my chest tighten. "Sweetheart, I think you've got the wrong person," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm not your mom." The little girl's voice was calm. "Yes, you are." Before I could respond, the florist stepped out from behind the counter. His shoes made a soft sound against the wooden floor, but his gaze never left mine. He placed one hand lightly on the girl's shoulder. "Sophie, go inside," he said. She hesitated, still staring at me. Then, without a word, she walked toward a narrow door at the back. The moment it clicked shut, he moved his hand to the underside of the counter. I heard the sound of metal shifting, a faint but certain click. My eyes darted to the entrance. The door was closed, and the light from outside now felt distant, unreachable. My phone buzzed in my bag, and I pulled it out quickly. My mom's name lit up the screen with a text. "Can't wait to see you, sweetheart." Her cheerful message felt like a rope I could grab in a rising tide. I typed back, "At the flower shop. Be there soon," but didn't press send. Something in my gut warned me not to reveal where I was just yet. When I looked up, the florist was closer. His eyes held no friendliness. "We've been waiting for this day for a long time," he said quietly. Every instinct in me screamed to leave, but the locked door behind me and his position between me and the counter made it clear this was not going to be as simple as walking out. I forced myself to stand still, my heart thudding against my ribs. The air smelled sweeter now, almost cloying. My gaze flicked toward the back door where Sophie had gone, but I could no longer hear her. In the space of minutes, the safe, ordinary errand of buying flowers had shifted into something that felt unreal. Yet the cool metal of my phone in my hand, the locked door at my back, and the unblinking stare of the man in front of me told me it was all too real. The florist's words hung in the air. "We've been waiting for this day for a long time." He said it as though I should understand, as if there had been some silent agreement between us. My grip on my phone tightened. "I think you have me confused with someone else," I said, keeping my voice steady. My mind was racing through possible explanations. Maybe he had mistaken me for a customer from years ago. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Anything but the possibility that this was deliberate. He didn't respond right away. Instead, his eyes scanned my face slowly, as if committing every detail to memory. "Sophie knows who you are," he said finally. "Children don't forget their mothers." The sentence landed like a stone in my chest. I had no children. I'd never been pregnant. "I'm not her mother," I said firmly. "I've never seen her before today." He shook his head slightly, almost pityingly. "That's not true. You left her. She's been waiting for you to come back." I forced myself to step toward the counter, hoping to put more distance between him and the front door. "Listen, I think we should call the police. They can sort this out." At the mention of police, his expression hardened. "That won't be necessary. We've been taking care of her. You owe her more than just walking away again." Before I could answer, the door at the back opened, and Sophie stepped out. She walked toward me with slow, deliberate steps, her eyes never leaving mine. When she reached me, she took my hand without asking. Her small fingers were warm, her grip surprisingly firm. "I told you you'd come back," she whispered. I crouched slightly so we were eye level. "Sophie, I'm not your mom," I said softly. "Where's your real mother?" Her brow furrowed. "You are." The florist stepped closer. "Show her," he said to Sophie. She held up her left wrist. A small, pale scar ran across it. I stared at it, my breath catching. I had a nearly identical scar on my own wrist from falling on a piece of broken glass when I was 9. It was an unsettling coincidence, but that was all it could be. The florist reached under the counter again, and this time he pulled out a worn envelope. He slid a photograph from it and placed it on the counter between us. My stomach tightened as I looked down. It was a younger version of me, no more than 16, sitting in a hospital bed, holding a newborn wrapped in a pink blanket. "That's not possible," I said, my voice low. "This isn't me." "It is," he said with certainty. "You were in a car accident. You lost your memory. You left without her." I shook my head, stepping back. "Number, I've never been in a car accident. I've never been here with a baby." The florist's eyes narrowed. "We have the hospital papers. Your name is on them." I glanced at the door again. It was still locked. The deadbolt turned all the way. My pulse quickened. My options were shrinking. I had to find a way to keep him talking while I figured out how to get out. I decided to play along, just enough to keep him from realizing I was looking for a way to escape. "If you think I'm her mother," I said, "then let me talk to her alone." He studied me for a moment, then gave a slow nod. "Fine. But don't try to run. You won't get far." Sophie didn't let go of my hand as we moved toward the back of the shop. The space was small, crowded with buckets of flowers and shelves of vases. There was no second exit, just a small window too high for either of us to reach. I knelt down in front of her. "Sophie, do you know where your real home is?" "This is my home," she said. "But I want to go with you." "Why?" I asked. She glanced toward the front where the florist was watching us. "Because you're my mom, and he's not nice when you're not here." The words hit like ice water. "Has he hurt you?" I asked quietly. She shrugged, looking down at the floor. "He gets mad." I squeezed her hand. "Okay, listen to me. I'm going to get us out of here, but you have to stay close to me." Her eyes lifted to mine, wide and trusting. She nodded. I stood, forcing my voice to sound casual as I called to the florist. "Can I see those hospital papers? Maybe they'll help me remember." He looked almost pleased as he stepped away from the counter and disappeared into a small office. The moment he was gone, I scanned the shop for anything I could use. On the counter, next to a vase of roses, were a pair of bouquet trimmers. I slipped them into my bag, the metal cool against my palm. Sophie's fingers tightened around mine. Her breathing was quick, her eyes flicking toward the front door. I leaned down, my voice low. "When I say go, we run." She nodded again, her grip steady. The florist returned, holding a folder stuffed with papers. He set it on the counter and started flipping through them. My eyes darted to the lock on the door, old brass and held by a single metal latch. My heart pounded as I realized I had a chance. The florist's back was turned as he sifted through the folder, muttering to himself while pulling out papers. Each second felt stretched, my awareness sharp and restless. My fingers brushed the bouquet trimmers hidden in my bag. I had one advantage. He thought I was still trying to remember. I glanced at Sophie. She was watching me closely, her eyes alert and waiting. She was ready. I gave her the smallest nod. The florist straightened, holding up a stack of hospital records. "Here," he said, his voice calm but edged with triumph. "This proves everything. Your name is on every page." He slid the top paper toward me. I glanced down just long enough to see my name typed in bold, the date from over a decade ago, and a list of injuries, including a concussion. It was meant to feel convincing. Instead, my pulse hardened with anger. Someone had built a lie around my identity. I looked up at him, forcing a curious expression. It's a lot to take in," I said slowly. "Could you get me some water?" He hesitated. His gaze flicked towards Sophie, then back to me. For a moment, I thought he'd refuse. Then he nodded and walked toward a small fridge in the corner. The moment his back was fully turned, I slipped the bouquet trimmers from my bag. My hand shook, but I kept my grip steady. I moved quickly to the front door, examining the old brass lock. The trimmers fit just enough to wedge between the latch and the frame. Sophie hovered at my side, glancing over her shoulder. "Hurry," she whispered. The metal groaned under the pressure. My palms were sweating, my muscles tense. I twisted harder. A sudden snap rang out, sharp but quiet enough to blend with the soft hum of the fridge door opening. The latch gave way. I looked at Sophie. "Go." We pushed the door open, the chime above it jangling in the silent shop. For a heartbeat, it felt like we had made it. Then I heard the sharp slam of the fridge door and the heavy thud of footsteps. "Stop!" the florist's voice bellowed. We didn't stop. My grip tightened on Sophie's hand as we bolted out onto the sidewalk. The sunlight hit us in a rush, bright and freeing, but we didn't slow down. We darted past a row of parked cars, weaving between them toward the street. Behind us, his footsteps pounded on the pavement. "Run, Sophie," I urged, pulling her into a narrow alley between two buildings. It smelled of damp concrete and old trash, but it gave us a few precious seconds. We emerged on the other side into a busier street. A delivery truck was idling by the curb, the driver standing beside it unloading boxes. I waved frantically. "Help us, please." The driver, a man in his 50s with a weathered face, looked at us in confusion. Then he saw the florist rounding the corner, his stride quick and focused. "In the truck!" the driver barked, throwing open the passenger door. I lifted Sophie inside, climbing in right after her. The driver slammed the door and rounded to his side just as the florist reached us. He pounded on the glass, shouting words I couldn't make out. The driver didn't wait. He threw the truck into gear and pulled into traffic, leaving the shop and the man shrinking in the side mirror. Sophie was trembling beside me, her small frame pressed against my arm. I wrapped both arms around her, my own breath still coming fast. "You're safe now," I said, more to convince myself than her. The driver glanced at me. "What's going on?" "Just get us to the police station," I said firmly. He nodded without pressing for details. The truck rumbled forward, weaving through the mid-morning traffic. I kept glancing back, half expecting to see the florist's car trailing us, but there was nothing. Within minutes, the station came into view, a squat brick building with a flag fluttering in the breeze. The driver pulled up to the curb and jumped out to open our door. I helped Sophie down, keeping her hand in mine as we hurried inside. The air in the lobby was cool and smelled faintly of coffee. A uniformed officer at the front desk looked up as we approached. "Can I help you?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady now. "This little girl is in danger and I need to report someone who's been holding her." The officer's expression shifted to alert concern. She stood and motioned for another officer to join us. Sophie clung tighter to me, burying her face against my side. They led us into a small interview room. As I began to explain, Sophie lifted her head and spoke for the first time since we'd run. "She's my mom," she told the officers. I met the officer's eyes, my heart tightening. "I'm not," I said softly, "but I'm not leaving her until we know the truth." The interview room was small, with pale walls and a single table between me and the two officers. Sophie sat beside me, swinging her feet under the chair. She kept glancing toward the door as if expecting it to open, and for the florist to walk in. The female officer, Sergeant Miller, leaned forward. "Hannah, start from the beginning. Tell us exactly what happened in that shop." I recounted everything. The flowers, the little girl's strange words, the locked door, the photograph, the supposed hospital papers, and the escape. Sophie didn't interrupt, but her hand stayed in mine the entire time. When I finished, Miller turned to Sophie. "Sweetheart, what's your full name?" "Sophie Hale," she said clearly. Miller nodded. "And who do you live with?" Sophie hesitated. "Mr. Hale. He says he's my dad." "Is he your real dad?" Miller's voice was calm but firm. Sophie's lips pressed together. "He told me my mom would come back, and now she's here." She looked up at me with certainty that sent a chill down my spine. The second officer, Detective Reynolds, excused himself and stepped out. I heard muffled voices in the hallway, a phone ringing and the low hum of a printer. The moments stretched, heavy with the unknown. Miller kept her eyes on me. "Hannah, do you have any idea why he would believe you're her mother?" "No," I said. "I've never met her before today. I've never been in an accident like he described." The door opened and Reynolds returned with a file. He slid it onto the table. "We pulled records from the hospital," he mentioned. "There is an admission under your name, Hannah Carter, from 13 years ago. Concussion, minor injuries, no ID at the time of intake. The woman was listed as a Jane Doe for the first 2 days." My pulse thudded in my ears. "That's not possible. I've never been admitted to that hospital." Reynolds opened the file. "There's a photo. This is from the intake form." He turned the page, and my breath caught. The woman in the picture looked like me. Same hair color, same eyes. But the jawline was slightly different. She was younger, maybe 19, with dark circles under her eyes and a vacant expression. She was holding a newborn. "That's not me," I said firmly. Miller studied me, then the photo. "It's a strong resemblance. Could be enough for someone to convince themselves you're the same person." Reynolds flipped another page. "The woman signed the discharge papers as Hannah Carter. We believe the ID was stolen from you at some point, possibly when you were still in high school. Whoever she was, she vanished after leaving the hospital." I sat back, my mind spinning. So he's been raising this child under the belief, or the lie, that I abandoned her. "That's what it looks like," Reynolds said, "and we have reason to believe Sophie was not his biological child either. We've already flagged her name in the missing persons database." Sophie's grip on my hand tightened. "I don't want to go back with him," she said quietly. Miller leaned toward her. "You don't have to, honey. We're going to keep you safe." A knock sounded on the door. Another officer stepped in, holding a printed sheet. "We have a hit. Sophie Hale matches the description of a child reported missing 4 years ago from a neighboring state. Mother's name is Claire Bennett." The air in the room shifted. Sophie looked at me, confusion in her eyes. "That's not my mom's name," she whispered. Reynolds knelt down beside her. "Sophie, sometimes people tell us stories that aren't true. Your real mom has been looking for you. Would you like to see a picture of her?" Sophie nodded hesitantly. The officer handed her a photo. It showed a woman in her early 30s with warm brown eyes and a tear-streaked smile, holding a birthday cake with the number 3 on it. Sophie's lips trembled. "I remember that cake," she said in a small voice. Miller's tone softened. "That's your real mom, Sophie. She's on her way here right now." Sophie turned to me. "Can you stay until she comes?" I squeezed her hand. "I'll stay." The minutes that followed felt like a mix of relief and anticipation. Sophie leaned against me, quiet now, while the officers made arrangements. I could hear the buzz of the station outside the door, the low rumble of voices, the shuffle of papers. Then the door opened again and a woman rushed in. She was breathless, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on Sophie. "Sophie," she gasped, her voice breaking. Sophie's chair scraped back as she ran into the woman's arms. "Mom," she cried, clinging to her. I watched as Claire knelt, holding her daughter close, tears streaming down her face. She murmured words I couldn't hear, her hands never letting go. Miller gave me a nod of acknowledgement, a silent thank you. Reynolds stepped out to continue the case against Hale, who had already been picked up for questioning. Claire looked at me over Sophie's shoulder. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice thick. "You don't have to," I replied. "Just keep her safe." Sophie turned back to me, her expression conflicted. "Will I see you again?" "If you want to," I said. "I'd like that." She smiled faintly and then wrapped her arms around me in a quick hug before going back to her mother's side. As I stood to leave, the weight of the last few hours hit me fully. I had walked into that shop thinking I was buying flowers. Instead, I had stepped into the middle of a lie that had stolen years from a child and a mother. And somehow, by trusting my instincts and refusing to walk away, I had helped to end it. The police station felt calmer after Sophie and her mother were reunited, but the weight of what had happened stayed with me. I sat in the lobby for a few minutes, letting the events settle in my mind. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a deep exhaustion. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Everything okay?" "Lunch still on?" I typed back quickly. "I'll explain when I see you," and slipped the phone into my bag. I wasn't ready to tell her over text that my simple errand had turned into an abduction rescue. Detective Reynolds came over to update me. "Hale is in custody. We're charging him with unlawful imprisonment and kidnapping. We'll also be investigating how he came to believe you were connected to Sophie." "Will Sophie be safe now?" I asked. "She's with her real mother, and we'll make sure they're protected. Claire has been searching for her for years. Today changed everything for them." I nodded, a quiet relief settling over me. It was strange to think how close I had come to simply buying the flowers and walking out, never knowing Sophie existed or that she needed help. When I finally stepped outside, the late afternoon sun felt warm against my face. The world seemed normal again. Cars passing, people walking dogs, the smell of fresh bread from a bakery nearby. But I was different. I had seen how danger could hide in ordinary places and how quickly a normal day could turn into something that demanded courage. I stopped at a different flower shop on my way to lunch. As I chose a bright bouquet of daisies for my mom, I thought about Sophie's small hand in mine, the way she had trusted me without hesitation. That trust had driven me to act, even when fear was pressing hard against my chest. When I walked into the diner, my mom's smile was the same as always, warm, loving, and happy to see me. She noticed the flowers immediately and reached across the table to squeeze my hand. I smiled back, but I knew I would tell her the full story before the day ended. She deserved to know why I was holding her hand a little tighter than usual. In the weeks that followed, Sophie and I kept in touch through her mother. We exchanged letters, and sometimes she would send me a photo she had drawn, always with two figures holding hands under the sun. One of them was always me. I learned that it didn't take a lifelong bond to care for someone. Sometimes it took only a moment, the moment you saw that they needed you, and the choice to act instead of turning away. Looking back, I realized I had walked into that shop thinking about what I could give my mother. I walked out having given something far greater to someone else: safety, hope, and the chance to go home. That day reminded me that courage doesn't feel like bravery in the moment. It feels like fear, pounding in your chest, but not letting it stop you from doing what's right. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever been in a situation where someone needed your help in a sudden, unexpected way? Share your story in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. And if this story moved you, like the video, share it, comment on it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this.